so proud of me.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is year 0. Today, Angela McArdle joins me once again. We discuss activism and what she has seen to work. We talk a little bit about the Free Radio Live or Free Talk Live or whatever that radio program was up in New Hampshire, because I don't listen to a lot of other podcasts. I don't even remember what the name of it is, but they were arrested for trading in Bitcoin, yada, 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 playing the crypto game. And so we talk a little bit about that. We talk a little bit about activism that she has seen that has been effective, and we get her perspective from that of an attorney. But first, RyanBunting.com. For all of your graphic design needs, go to RyanBunting.com. Ryan Bunting is a great libertarian and anarcho-capitalist. He's also a great graphic designer. If you want your podcast logo to look like mine or Pete Quinones, go to RyanBunting.com for all of your graphic design needs. And thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. Remember, if you love this show, as I know all of you do, and you want it ad-free without listening to me bitch about RyanBunting.com all the time, go to patreon.com/TD Salmons. And for less than a cup of coffee a month, you can get this show ad-free. Plus the other show, I Done Told You, with the Biltong Queen, the only person I know that has been nuked from Twitter in less than 2 weeks, my wife, Beatrix Berger. So, enjoy the show. Okay. Miss Angela McArdle joins me once again. How are you doing, ma'am?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me back.
I'm so excited to have you back on. There's been a lot going on since the last time we talked. There's a lot of drama that I try to keep myself out of because it's not my scene, but there's a lot of kind of tyranny that we've been noticing. A lot of hints at as to what's coming, whether or not it's right on our doorstep or not. It's definitely something these people are thinking about. And then there's your activism, which I wanted to talk to you about. And the reason I wanted to talk to you about, because there were, well, man, I can't remember the name of the radio show, but a bunch of people got arrested for Bitcoin up in New Hampshire. Am I correct about that? You know much more about this than I do.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. Thank you. Yes. And so what exactly happened? Because I know you work in law, so you kind of understand what's going on a little bit better than the rest of us. So what exactly was happening in that situation?
Okay, so it's been a couple of months since I read the latest updates on the situation, but they basically were busted for not complying with the laws regarding, finances. And I believe that they had something like Bitcoin ATMs. I'm butchering this a little bit, so everyone, I know everyone's going to be like, well, actually, I know, just, bear with me. So they didn't comply with all the financial requirements, and there was a little bit of skepticism as to whether or not they knew that they were going to get in trouble and whether or not they were willfully disobeying the law and so on and so forth. I really think that should not be the focus of the problem, right? So the feds came in and busted them, Ian Freeman and the rest of the people. They're calling them the Crypto Six. and threw him in jail, and they're going to be facing some pretty serious charges. I believe arraignment has already happened, so I'm not sure what the current status is.
Okay.
But yeah, the federal government is cracking down. I've talked with the cryptocurrency community about this a little bit, and I have Bitcoin, I have some altcoins, but I'm not nearly as sophisticated and savvy with the stuff as the people who are really bought in, to Bitcoin are people who
Right.
use it every day.
Right.
And there's a lot of talk and disagreement about whether or not it's good for the federal government to treat Bitcoin like a currency. They want to get a lot of control over it, and some people say that, well, that's great that they want to adopt this as currency because they can't control the blockchain, they can't devalue it, they can't print more money. Okay, those are great things, right? But when you start treating it like currency, then there are a whole lot of laws that pop up, and that's why these guys get thrown in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still not totally sold on whether or not it's a good thing for the federal government to be recognizing Bitcoin like it's legal tender.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a fundraiser for these guys called the Crypto Six. Justin O'Donnell in New Hampshire has a lot more information on that, and he's following it. I did reach out to their legal counsel a few months ago to ask, is there anything we can do? Should we send letters in for their arraignment? Should we try to ask the judge to reduce bail, let them out? And their attorney told me, yeah, we could have letters sent when sentencing happens, but we're not there yet. And that kind of made me go, yikes, because it sounds like they're just saying this is inevitable. These guys are going to get sentenced and have the book thrown at them. So that's not encouraging.
Are we looking at another like Ross Ulbricht situation, or is it not going to be quite that serious? Like, what are we looking at?
I don't think it's going to be 2 life terms. I think we're looking more at, many years. 20 years to me is a really long time.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the vibe that I'm getting. But, ultimately that'll come down to what happens at sentencing. I don't know that there's a trial date yet. I don't know if they're in pretrial motions or, what the status is. So
Right.
I'll have to look into that to get like a really accurate update.
Okay. So what
I know they had ATMs and things,
yeah,
they got in trouble for having Bitcoin ATMs or something.
There was, man, and I don't know what how legit this is, but I know Vin Armani had said that he had talked to these guys about the way they were going about this, and
Yeah.
and he had given them advice to do it a different way because he saw flaws in their handling of the crypto community. So, it really sucks to think that they had been warned that, hey, you're potentially like walking on hallowed ground here and this will not end well for you. And they either ignored it or didn't think he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, I had the same conversation with Vin, and on the one hand, like, it's really frustrating when you give someone advice and they don't follow it, and then you're kind of in this I told you so position. On the other hand, I think we need to, like, I want to caution people, but I also want to respect people's choices.
Right.
That if they are assuming the risk and they're trying to see how much they can get away with, I respect that. And it is a nonviolent crime.
Oh, yeah,
if you even want to, if you want to call it crime. So I think what should happen is a discussion around whether or not people are assuming the risk and doing so responsibly, and if people who are connected to the situation understand their level of risk as well. Because I definitely admire the people who are willing to go out and say, like, I'll die for this cause, I'll go to prison over this, like, it's really important. I respect that. Right. I just want to make sure that everybody is completely informed of the situation they're walking into. And that part I'm not totally clear on. I believe Ian was informed. I don't actually know about everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as an agorist, I like really kind of lean to defending these guys because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
they're doing everything they can to create this counter economy to undermine the state. But excuse me, there's got to be one of the things I'm very aware of in the way that I conduct my agorism is what is not going to draw attention to me, right? It's
Yeah.
that's one of the first things I think of. See, my point in agorism isn't to make a statement, that the state can see. My point in agorism is to live as free as I can. I possibly can. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you go out trying to make a statement and you're trying to put yourself out there, you're likely going to find yourself in a bad situation because you're
Right.
going to draw attention.
Right. And I think that that's like, that's a criticism that people have of John McAfee too. A
Yeah.
lot of people are really split about him. And I know there's like other drama and people say he's like ran a crypto scam and stuff like that. But I really think that people didn't like that he drew the ire, of what I call like the eye of Sauron, like the
Mm,
locus of government right onto him.
right.
And I just don't know how to feel about that. Like, I get it, people are like, common sense this, common sense that, and then other people are like, no, we have to respect him because he's a martyr. I guess really what we need to respect are his wishes.
Right.
And like, like he chose to do that. He's a smart person, so is Ian. They know the risk, right? What I have a little bit of trouble with is when we get into sort of like willful ignorance and kind of like the ego and hubris that
Right.
happens like when you reject someone's advice. I
Mm,
think you got to be really like calculating, like, and be upfront with people and say, like, hey, I'm doing this and it's a huge risk, and proceed with caution. Like,
right.
I haven't paid federal income tax in a while, but I'm not pulling in millions of dollars where I'm going to be like Wesley Snipes, where the federal government's going to want to make an example of me.
Right.
So I tell people like, yeah, you should dodge taxes and you should check into it to see like if you think you can get away with it.
Right.
And the IRS is automating things more and more. So do activism at the level of risk that you're comfortable with. Push your boundaries a little bit and see what happens.
Right. Exactly. And so, well, I mean, that kind of moves us a little bit because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and what I guess caught me aware of this was this entire situation in New Hampshire, and you started talking about letter writing campaigns and your activism and things of that nature. And I was like, well, I would like to talk to her about some of the things that she's done. What has she
Mm-hmm.
seen succeed? What has she seen fail? Are there strategies that work better than other strategies and things of that nature? So, what is some of the activism you've been involved in?
Oh, sure. So letter writing campaigns are something that are usually very successful when it comes to court. So at least 10 years ago, my good friend Katie McCall, who now lives in New Hampshire, was living in California at the time, and she was a midwifery student. Technically, she was already a certified midwife in the state of Arizona, but California makes you, re-educate yourself because that's how California is, regulatory
Because
nonsense, right?
everything causes
So she's going
cancer
through
in the
school
state of
again.
California. That's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that's like my
right.
big
Including
joke. That's my big joke is everything causes cancer in the state of California, so you should just stay away from California.
yeah, it's the West Coast cancer state. So anyway, Katie delivered a baby in an emergency. The woman didn't want to go to the hospital to have a hospital birth. What's Katie going to do? She delivers the baby. The baby was not coming out in the normal way. Katie is able to, reach in and fix the baby, pull the baby out, basically save the baby's life because the mother was not being very cooperative. And what happens? Katie gets dragged into court, arrested, right before the statute of limitations runs out. And they want to hit her with all kinds of like insane things. I can't remember. It was practicing medicine without a license and some other stupid stuff, right? So we followed the whole thing, and the midwifery community mostly was behind her, except there were some people who were cowardly, and they sentenced her and they convicted her of practicing medicine without a license, and they wanted to throw her, she has children, by the way. They want to throw her in prison for 4 years. Insane.
For
So
saving,
we did
for saving a child's life.
Yes.
Okay. So
for saving a child's life without a license.
So I'm sorry, like I have to ask this. In a situation such as this, like, is it even ever compared to an abortion? Because you have these people blatantly taking a child's life, but now like somebody who's actually saving a child's life that the mother wanted, like, okay.
Yeah.
If you were to see an emergency on the side of the road in California, are you not supposed to perform the Heimlich? Are you not supposed to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation? Are you not supposed to act, for your fellow man?
Right? It makes you nervous when you hear about cases like this.
Yeah.
So we did a letter writing campaign to the judge at sentencing, and we were able to get her no time in jail, no time in prison. So that was really good. She ended up with a bunch of horrible, stupid community service and 40 hours of Caltrans, which means picking up trash on the side of the road, on the side of the freeway.
Oh, so it's like community really service.
Intense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So she had like 100 hours, I think, of community service, something like that, and 40 hours of trash pickup. Pretty gnarly, but no prison time. So I think that was effective. And so I did the same thing again recently with Nicholas Wildstar, who is like a California liberty activist. He ran for governor under the LP ticket in 2018, and he's running now as a Republican. Like, he got dragged into court over a fix-it ticket, so traffic ticket, right? Years ago. And then he mouthed off in court and was basically rude to the judge. And they slapped him with several contempt of court charges. Now, he wasn't threatening. He wasn't violent. We're not talking about crazy, what the heck's wrong with you? It's just, he was annoying. And so they threatened to throw him in prison. And part of it was because he was recording his court appearance, which, heaven forbid, you can't do that. So they threatened to throw him in jail or prison for, I think that was 6 years. So we did a letter writing campaign and got him completely out of that, no time. Like, they convicted him and gave him community service and that kind of crap, but no jail time. So I think letter writing is very effective. You need to do it a certain way. Like, you don't want to write a letter screaming at the judge, telling him what a piece of garbage he is. That actually doesn't work. You write a letter to the judge at sentencing and you say, I know so-and-so, he is an excellent member of the community. It would be damaging if he went to jail. We're all better off if he's out. And you just have a lot of people do that.
Right.
So, so I've found that to be really effective activism. Oh, here's another really good one. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, when you're talking about letter writing, there's a format, but it's not like this legal format.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Okay. No, it's just certain things that they want to hear and then certain things you shouldn't say.
Okay.
But you need to generally follow the format of, I know this person personally. They have done XYZ in the community. They're an asset. Please don't send them to jail. Pretty simple.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So another one we had, protesting is controversial in the liberty community. Some people say that it's helpful. Other people say, oh, it's a waste of your time. Well, back in 2013 in LA, city council was going to ban food sharing in public rights of way. That's more commonly known as feeding homeless people.
Right.
And we had a wild protest with like over 800 people out in front of one of the city councilmen's offices on Hollywood Boulevard. And they tabled the motion. Like, the press was so bad and the public outcry was so intense. And there were news trucks everywhere, and they were like, never mind. And they just scrapped it. So I'd say that was really effective because as you all know, like, LA is, homeless capital of the world. And our social services are a disaster. So, I think feeding somebody a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is not such a terrible thing to do.
Yeah, I'm looking right now because I remember this story. I think it was from last year. Um, okay, I can't find it, and I'm not going to sit there and scroll through Google or DuckDuckGo for the next 10 minutes trying to figure it out. Beer, please. Sorry, my maid was here. Um, I'm not supposed to say that. It's my wife. but
Nice, nice.
but no, there was a gentleman. There was somebody who got arrested. I want to say it was last year. It might have been 2019. Nia Boogie stole. Sorry, my dog wants attention. Um, he got arrested for giving a homeless guy McDonald's, and I remember
Yeah.
when thank you, baby. Ah, look, on a tray and everything. Yeah, I wish I would have gotten that on camera. Um, but the whenever I was like 18, I'm gonna say 18 because yeah, I guess statute of limitations is passed. I was working for a crane company, grinding and driving forklift and sandblasting when I was 17, but whatever. Um, I used to stop, and there was a homeless guy down like right. I would take an exit before the exit I needed to take because there was a homeless Vietnam veteran that was always there, and there was a McDonald's right there on the corner. So every payday, I would grab the dude. We'd go into McDonald's. He'd tell me stories from Vietnam, and I would buy him dinner. Like that was kind of the deal we had worked out. And when I heard this, I was like, what? I mean, you're not even allowed to help people. And then I ran
Right.
into there's a group that's based here in Texas that goes out every year and they feed the homeless every year, and they arm themselves. They're walking around with AR-15s and they're feeding the homeless. And the cops don't even jack with them. They don't mess with them. They're like, no, we don't want anything to do with these guys.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I can't remember
Yeah.
the name of the group. I would tell you right now, but yeah, I can't remember the name of the group. I know I've met the photographer that videos these events. They're the guys. Do you remember a couple of years ago? A group of guys rolled a guillotine up to the courthouse in Austin.
Yes.
It's those guys. It's the same. It's the
Okay.
same group of guys. I can't remember what they go by like as far as a tagline, but it's the same group of guys. But they go up to Dallas every year and they feed the homeless, and they're armed with AR-15s, and they're like, yeah, like, and the cops just leave them alone because they're technically breaking the law. But I mean, who are they hurting? They're not hurting
Right.
anybody, you
Yeah,
know?
it's interesting trying to make feeding homeless people illegal. So I think there's two things that tries to do. So it tries to destroy the sense of community that we have.
Right.
And it's community building within the groups themselves that do that, and then community building with homeless people,
Right.
which one of the best things you can do for a homeless person. Everyone wants to scream about how we need housing, we need this, we need that. You got to feed them. One of the best things you can do to help them reintegrate is to treat them like another human being
Yeah.
instead of, like a statue or something
Or a
that you'd
ward
avert
of
your
the
eyes from.
state or something.
Yeah. And then the other thing that it does is it reinforces the idea that you must have government services to care
Mhm.
for people.
Right.
So that's what those bans do.
Yeah,
So
there's actually a really cool program, and I'm not going to make this entire episode about homeless people, but there's a really cool program in Houston. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but they give homeless people jobs, and they house
yeah.
them. They house the homeless people as long as the homeless people work, right? And
Yep.
so those that are willing, like those that just fell on hard times, are kind of like filtered out from those that are incapable of keeping a job. And yeah, they give them housing, and then they offer them jobs for minimal pay, but their housing's taken care of, and they're able to work themselves out of this situation. And I'm like, that's a perfect, mutual aid style,
Yeah.
opportunity offered to these people.
And that's really great too, because it's like it's something that they can handle.
Right.
When you want to help people, when you want to make your activism geared towards helping people, you got to keep in mind, like, can this person actually do, can they stick with what I'm offering them, or is this just way beyond their capacity right now?
Right. Yeah.
Which is like, I think, a very like libertarian perspective,
Mm.
because central planning, they're like, oh no, this is just one size fits all program for everyone, and the reality is, like, not everybody's there. Don't take someone who is a homeless crack addict who's been living that lifestyle for like 12 years and expect them to turn into like this model citizen overnight. Like,
Exactly.
that's just not realistic. See what they can do. Like, can you meet me once a week for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Great.
Yeah.
you know
Well,
can you pick up cans? Can you work a minimum wage job? You meet people where they're at.
right. Exactly. There was that guy that I don't even know if you remember this. You're probably too young to remember this because you look a lot younger than me. So I'm just guessing here. I'm just judging a book by its cover.
That's excellent.
But years ago, there was a guy who was a homeless guy, and he got a claim to fame because of his voice. I don't know if you remember this, but he made a lot of money doing voiceover work, and within like 6 months, he was homeless again. And
Yeah, it's so sad.
you know, and I can't remember the guy's name and or anything like any like real details. I just remember he was discovered by some radio disc jockey, and the radio disc jockey was like, "You have like the perfect voice," and then he ended up like getting hired for all these voiceover like jobs, made a bunch of money, bought a house with cash, and it was like 6 months later he was homeless again. Because, like you said, you got to meet people where they're at. The guy wasn't ready for
Right.
the amount of fame that came his way, and so that's I mean, it's relatively like interesting to me because whenever I think, and I think this is kind of what pushed me to agorism, is when I think of libertarianism, when I think of Austrian economics, when I think of, as David Nolan put it, the job of libertarians is to evangelize. I mean,
Yeah.
it is taken upon yourself in an evangelical stance and preaching this gospel for lack of a better term, to non-believers. And I think Matt Erickson has made a decent point that people don't want to hear this. And I think he misses the mark when he says people have heard of libertarianism and don't want it. But I think he's onto something because I just think he's looking at things a little bit too micro. Like, you got to kind of, zoom out and look at the entire picture.
Yeah.
So we all know the idea that power corrupts, right? But I don't.
Yeah.
But
Power
but
corrupts a
but
bunch.
a lot of people like focus that on politicians. Well, no, I think power has corrupted citizens. I think the idea that you can get power to wield over your ideological enemies is more attractive to a lot of people than everybody being free, right? Because
I think it really I think it depends on the time and the situation. Sometimes, yes. So,
okay,
like, I had an experience in the laundromat last year where I was like it was over 100 degrees outside and I had to do laundry. I don't remember what the situation was, but it had to be done now, right?
Right.
And I went in without a mask, and this Karen comes screeching at me from the back of the laundromat about how I need to put on a mask. It's like humid, and I'm just like, there's no way. And she was obviously really like drunk on what she perceived as like the little bit of power that she could grasp, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Of course, she blew right past the grizzled like trucker dude who was like almost 7 feet tall, who was also not wearing a mask because she realized she wasn't going to be able to boss him around, you know.
Yeah.
But she was like, oh, look, another like skinny white person, a woman. I bet I can boss her around, you know.
Right.
She
Yeah.
couldn't, you know, she had a very unpleasant experience. But yeah, she was like clearly like drunk on mask power. It was very weird. But I do
Or you
agree
could have,
that
or
like
you could have
people
been,
get hung up on that.
you could have been like, look, this is an emergency mask cleaning session right now. That's what I'm doing. I'm cleaning my mask.
I made her really uncomfortable from a woman to woman perspective. I made her very uncomfortable. She just didn't say, I won't repeat what I said because it was very personal, but she really was humiliated.
Yeah.
And that's what you got to do. I think, though, that when we talk about people don't want libertarianism, I don't think that they want the libertarianism that LP National sells. I think that they want it in certain areas sometimes, and in other areas they don't.
Right.
So like all of the far leftists, you know, they screamed for the liberation of the Catalonians in Spain. They were all about that secession movement.
Right.
And they were all about California seceding in 2016 when Donald Trump got elected. I feel like it's often like liberty for me, but not for thee. And so it's like a pretty, you know, very low resolution version of liberty. But sometimes they want it. They just don't quite seem to understand.
Why do you think it is that you don't hear libertarians? I think I know why. So this might be an easy answer. But why do you think it is that you don't hear anybody, libertarians, Democrats, Republicans, nobody talks about Chiron?
About Tron?
Chiron, Cheran in Mexico?
Oh, why don't they don't? Sorry, at first I thought you said Tron, like the movie. Why don't people talk about? No one talks about Mexico. People talk about things that they hear in the news. So when we talk about Mexico, we talk about illegal immigration. We talk about cartels. You know, they don't talk about Zapatistas and like freedom or secession or localization. That's not what we're spoon-fed.
Well, right.
Media.
But I'm just wondering why libertarians don't spend more time like talking about it. Like I had one guy, I brought it up to a libertarian one time, and cause he was a minarchist, and he was like, "Oh, name one time when anarchy has ever worked." And I was like, "Well, there was the case of ancient Ireland. There was Moorsnet, you know, years ago, hundreds of years ago, and then today you have Chiron in Mexico." And he goes, Chiron, what is that? And so I gave him, I shared a link with him. He goes, well, that sounds communist. And I'm like, yeah, but it's all voluntary. Like everything they're doing is voluntary. Like nobody's forcing anybody to do anything. Like this is all voluntary. And so it's like this, libertarians are allergic to mutualism. And I think mutualism is the natural way in which people interact. I mean, you look. I mean, if you look back before the growth of the nanny state and all these entitlement programs, it was mutual aid societies that took care of all this. So I don't understand why libertarians shy away from that part of history.
Well, I hear people talk a lot about mutual aid societies, but I don't hear them talk about left-leaning secession movements because that's like, ew, icky, you know, gross. Okay, well, you know, I probably don't want to live there either, but I support the people's right of self-determination, and you should too.
Right.
And I think that that's a really good way to bridge the gap, you know, like the stupid, Chaz garden last year. I get it. Failed experiment, people that I don't want to be friends with. But they were trying to do something autonomous.
Right.
And I think that, the people are annoying. I get it. But that's your in to talk to them, right? Like,
Right.
and it's got to be a long game strategy. You're not going to convert them all to libertarianism overnight, but you might be able to convert them to be a little less controlling with what you do.
Right.
So, you have to just approach it differently. Like, not everybody cares about, Rothbard and Mises. That sucks, and that's just reality. So, work with reality.
I think my reading Voltairine de Cleyre on her interpretation of anarchism, and she basically painted a picture of panarchy before there was a term panarchy. And so whenever I look at like what libertarianism is or anarchy, I look at it and I say, well, every person is going to choose for themselves what works best for themselves. And just because it works best for you doesn't mean it works best for your neighbor. And so you have to take into consideration every person has different preferences. So when I look at Sharon, I'm celebrating. Whereas some of these guys are, like you said, they are so dedicated to Rothbard or Mises. All they see is this collectivist. And I'm like, okay, but nobody's forcing anybody to do anything. Like,
it's just a Hoppian covenant community that Hoppe wouldn't live in.
Right.
That's really
exactly.
because they have, I'm pretty sure it's Sharon that has some kind of aggressive rules about things they do and don't allow. Do they allow drug use?
I don't know about drug use. I know they do not allow any political activism whatsoever. So like no stickers, no flags. Like you can't enter the city with any of this, type of stuff. They won't allow you in. I know that. I don't know anything about the drug use. I haven't really looked into that.
Maybe it's not there, but I know there is one community that is similar in Mexico that they're very autonomous and they govern themselves and they don't allow certain lifestyle choices in, which is, interesting, right? But that's really kind of how we behave, right? Like that's how we behave as human beings.
Right. You ostracize those you don't want to interact with.
Yeah, that's normal. That's actually like normal. Maybe I want to like smoke weed or whatever and they don't want me to. Okay, well, time for me to go make other friends.
Yeah. Well, in that one of the most basic rights to choose who you interact with.
Yeah.
So much of the focus of my podcast is to point out abuses of power and how bad things have gotten and the direction in which we're heading as a society. And it can be a real black pill. I've partnered up with Richard Grove to offer my listeners an opportunity to sign up to his Autonomy Course. The Autonomy Course is designed for people looking for solutions, people that want to shape their own future, people that are not willing to be at the behest of large corporations or the United States government or the banking system. The Autonomy Course is designed for those of you who wish to have complete control of the reins of your life, who are looking to be successful, to thrive and not just survive, to provide for your family by utilizing your existing skills and learning how to market and sell those skills in order to be your own boss, or learn new skills in order to leverage that into a new career opportunity. So if there's a job out there you've been trying to get or you've been wishing you could get, but you just don't have the skills for it, the Autonomy Course is the place for you to start, to learn how to land that position, to learn how to market yourself better, to gain confidence, and to be surrounded by a community of like-minded people that will encourage you and help you along the way. So use my affiliate links and go check out the Autonomy Course. It could be right for you.
So, Yeah, it seems weird that libertarians of any stripe would be in any way against that. Whether you want to live there or not, you at least have to recognize, well, they're doing their thing,
Yeah.
and it's not through coercion. They're, the only thing that I can and they started introducing capitalist style businesses here in the last year or so into the community. But the only thing I can actually say that they do anything by coercion is they keep out politicians and the cartel.
Yeah.
So, okay. The people that were
done.
causing problems in their society are no longer welcome. Okay.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits, I guess, of having a really corrupt and sort of weak centralized government is they're able to do stuff like that. It would be great to see communities like that happen in the United States. But I think the best that we can get right now is,
Slab
Free
City.
State Project, Slab City. We've got some special economic zones that are at least good for people financially, but it just doesn't translate with when you try to live there.
Right. Yeah. So back to some activism, civil disobedience. What else have you been involved in that you noticed that has actually had some effects and done some good work for you?
Oh, there's a long list of things, but I'll tell you what I'm working on right now with Cuba. There is a girl on Twitter and Instagram named...
Before we get into that, will you tell us what's going on with Cuba? Because honestly, I just started a new job, and I know there were some protests happening, but I am really out of the loop on what's happening in Cuba.
Well, I don't know what started it, but it's been going on actually for months.
Okay.
And people are broke and starving, and they cannot feed themselves. And they have been complaining, and civil unrest has been growing.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cuban government has cracked down on them and removed people's internet access and aggressively restricted a lot of the things that they're already restricted. People don't realize, maybe that's not correct. A lot of people don't realize how miserable it is to live there because Cuba runs this great, PR game for people who are Democrats and on the left politically, where they send doctors out and try to, say, oh, we are great. Everybody's has literacy here. Okay, well, if you can read, but you can't eat, how valuable is reading, when you're starving?
Yeah.
So things have just been getting worse.
I know Sherry Voluntary had made a comment the other day about the libertarian movement in Cuba.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And did they lose like a library or a bunch of books or?
Oh, I don't know about the library. I know that they've been getting arrested. Well, that's been going on actually since at least 2018.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they get arrested. The government drags them in. They get their, assets stolen. It's really pretty bad.
So do you think this is kind of do you think John Brennan is, with his statements on libertarians being, radicals, do you think that's kind of leading us down the same path? And maybe we should pay more attention to what's going on in Cuba?
I think so. I think people need to pay attention to what's going on in Cuba. This is something where I would say, oh, that's way, maybe it'll happen in my lifetime, but it's way down the road.
Yeah.
And I'm no longer convinced of that after how aggressively and quickly and easily we were locked down last year.
Right.
I think that things like this can happen really fast.
Yeah.
And LA County is locking down again starting tomorrow. At least they're starting with they're reintroducing indoor mask mandates. So I don't actually know if they're aggressively locking down, but they're discussing it. So we'll see what happens. I think all this stuff can happen really rapidly. And I think that they're going to push mandatory vaccination laws. That's coming down the pipeline. Yeah. So it maybe, it's not just people with the big L libertarian, next to their name, but it's liberty-minded people.
Right. Okay. Well, tell your story now. I just wanted to
Yeah.
try to get some information in my head.
So some of the horror stories that I've seen on Cuba too are like that they're selling things for food that are not food because people they don't have any money, right? So they're desperate to try to make money. And then they don't have any food, so they're desperate to put something in their food. The worst story I heard was that a lot of people were melting condoms onto pizza to make it look like pepperoni.
Oh.
So yeah, I don't really know how that works. I assume you slice it up and you melt it and it looks kind of like it's pretty bad, right? So that's how hungry people are, that they're willing to chew on that just to literally have anything in their mouth and try to stretch their food supply. So there's a lot of Cuban Americans who are trying to do something, anything, and the challenge to getting aid in, people have different views about NGOs, but the NGOs can't even get their aid into Cuba because the Cuban government is blocking it. So one thing we've been able to figure out is there's this girl, Gemini, and her Instagram and Twitter handle are Hola Gemini, HOLAGEMENY. She can remotely add data to people's cell phones, who she vets them to make sure that they're actually not regime supporters, that they're liberty-minded people. And she can, for about $21, re-up someone's phone. They get 50 minutes of talk time and a certain chunk of data. And what they can do then is they can contact their families and they can, coordinate with people maybe who are in the States or whoever. And then aid and help to people has got to be done at with precision and on a small scale, right? Because the people in Cuba know how you can help them, but us on the outside looking in, we don't really know because it's just the government's blocking us.
Right.
So that's one thing that I'm going to be helping with, is helping her to get more people vetted and get people funding so that they can actually contact their families. People need medicine too. Apparently everybody's dying, in hospitals because there's no medicine and no supplies. And Zach Foster, who runs the Mises Mambi Institute, he communicates directly with people who are in the Cuban Libertarian Party. So I'm hearing it from a few different boots on the ground sources and people who have family there. So that's a really good activism fundraiser that you can do, is help to connect people, to the outside world and with their families, and so they can share their stories online. Because the Coast Guard's trying to block people from leaving Florida, to go to Cuba. It's just a lot of hurdles right now, a lot of challenges. But it's, there's literally, I found something we can do. So I'm celebrating that and trying to help with that. And we're going to do probably a fundraiser concert in Orange County soon with the band 390. They're a very libertarian punk band.
Okay.
So people are coming together. It's just, it's taken a little bit of work to figure out how you can actually get around the state. This has been a real challenge.
And this may be a stupid question, but I'm just not really aware. Can you get these people access to cryptocurrencies? Is that even something that could help them out?
Well, I believe we did before. So I don't know how we can do it yet. In theory, yes, but that's what I'm working on. I think we did back in 2018. I had a fundraiser for the Cuban LP, and we got them tech. We had to kind of figure out a way to smuggle in old laptops and things. It's really hard to get these people just basic technological tools that the rest of us take for granted. Mm-hmm. And there was talk about cryptocurrency, so we'll try to work on that one. But then once they get money, what do they even do with it if there's nowhere to buy food?
Well, and here,
bribe people? Can you bribe them?
Well, one of the things I'm really focused on because of the breaking of the supply chain over the last year is growing my own food. Do they not have the capabilities to grow their own food, or they're?
Oh, it's illegal. I mean, they mostly don't have the capabilities to, but that's illegal. So it's illegal to hoard food. It's illegal to grow your own food. I don't know about rainwater, but yeah, those are things you can get in very serious trouble for.
No
And
shit.
part of the problem in Cuba is culturally they have like a snitch culture. And it's not just that they all love the government. They don't, but everybody's trying to get ahead because everyone's broke and starving.
And the only way
So,
to get ahead is to bribe the government, is to get the government on your side.
or to turn someone in and hope you get a favor, or you
Yeah.
try to get what they have. And it's not that every single person is like that, but it is pervasive. And that's what happens when you have people who are starving and they have their back against the wall, and that people in your neighborhood are informants because that's what communist government encourages you to do. And it's just a really sucky situation.
Yeah, it's all about self-preservation at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
And how are you gonna survive till tomorrow? Not necessarily who you have any loyalties or ties to.
Right. So it's like that's the reality. I don't feel that it's my place to judge anyone for behaving that way when they're literally in a life or death situation, and
Right.
that's the culture that they're raised in. Like what
Yeah.
we should
No. No.
do is try to help them, and then maybe rehabilitate that culture after we've got situations.
Yeah. No. It's very difficult scenario to put yourself into.
Yeah.
You know. I'm just trying to think. Like, I don't. Man, I can't even think if I know. I know a lot of people, and I can't think if I know anybody that is capable of doing anything. Well, I may know a couple of people, but
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Like how do you literally got to sneak past the Cuban government to get them food. A
right.
handful of people are doing it, but a lot of people are also getting busted by the Coast Guard trying to leave Florida. So that really sucks too, It's
Well,
like
and
you got two governments in the way.
and see, that's something that Conkin wrote about, and it was a book that was never published, and there are parts of it out there that you can find on counter economics. And he talks about the history of counter economics, and he talks about these communist states and, the Soviet Union. He talks about Pol Pot's Cambodia. That's Cambodia, right?
Yep.
Um, and he's talking about how the black market operated in these countries, but never do I remember a situation where food was on the black market. Like this is something new for me.
Yeah, I can't think of any. I mean, Soviet Russia, I'm sure that they had the same problem.
Well, yeah, but that's not even what the black market was dealing with at that time. They weren't dealing with like smuggling food to people that weren't allowed to have food.
Right.
You know, yeah. I mean, you had the Holodomor, or however you say that. Hello, I don't know.
Holodomor. Yeah, in the
There you go.
Ukraine, yeah.
Yeah, you had that situation, but that was them taking food from people.
Yeah.
That was encouraging these people to grow the food and then just taking the food from them. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like I've never heard of a situation where the food is a black market item. You know, that's insanity.
Yeah, it's really challenging, but I'm hoping that the regime just collapses, or at least this is a chink in its armor. That's the best that I can hope for. But there you go. Like there's some Cuban activism, and hopefully more things will come to the surface.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we're running on an hour, up to an hour, but I do want to cover one more thing with you if you have a little bit more time.
Yeah.
Okay. So you brought it up to me in email, and I made a joke and just kind of like, yeah, whatever. But I wasn't blowing you off. I was just being goofy because that's what I do. The door-to-door vaccine threats. How do we address this?
I think we need to address this from several different avenues. I think one is we need to try to appeal to the people who are doing this job and get them to flip, meet literature for literature.
Right.
I think some people need to hide and not be home, especially if you have kids. Like if you have children, I don't think that you need to be opening the door to these people. I think you need to hide and stay away from them because the state, especially in California, is happy to steal your kids.
Right.
And they've already talked about sending people door to door to see if your kids are vaccinated before all of this stuff.
Well, I remember a story years ago, probably about 10, 15 years ago. A couple in, I want to say it was Michigan, had their kids taken from them because they refused to put them on ADHD medication.
Yep.
So yeah, like that's a serious threat. Now, I live out in the middle of nowhere, so I'm kind of like, I'm not like super worried. You've seen my dog jumping on me. Like, I got two of those. Like,
right.
I'm like, kind of like, all right, like whatever. You bring your ass down here, like you're asking for trouble. Like, I don't have to. I'm not worried about because somebody coming knocking on my door. And this is one of the things I've been on for years, even before I started a podcast. I've been telling everybody, get out of the cities, get away from the cities. This is not going to end well. There are things happening in these cities, the way that they are corralling people together and that they are treating people like cattle. This is not going to end well. So my thing is get away from the threat,
Yeah.
kind of like not necessarily to the extent Vin Armani did, but kind of the same idea. Like just leave them. Like let them have their little central locations. Everything can be done remotely nowadays.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that. The pain point for me is that, I feel like California, Los Angeles especially, and Sacramento to a lesser degree, that's the canary in the coal mine. What happens there is going to happen to the rest of the country. And sure, there are going to be certain areas that are able to withstand it and resist it because they have leadership and culture and people who are just like, absolutely not, it's not happening here.
Right.
But for areas that are not that strong, like places that aren't Florida, good luck.
Yeah.
Because California is sort of like the testing ground for all of these policies.
Yeah, you're in the heart of you're right
Yeah.
in the heart of the beast. I mean, honestly.
So do we try to fight back against it and try to stave it off for the rest of you in addition to ourselves? Or do we just let California fall and just kind of hold our breaths and wait like, well, it's coming, the tidal wave it'll come for us all. So that's a real, it's something I struggle with. Like I used to love living in LA. Love it. I love everything about it. The food, the culture, the weather, the music scene. I just, there's nothing that I don't care about the traffic. I don't care about the crowds.
Right.
But now when I say I love LA, it's like I'm talking about a dead person. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I love grandma. Oh, I forgot she died 8 months ago.
Right.
So it's like, I love what is no longer there.
Is it possible, and this is something I've heard Matt Erickson say a couple of times, and I'm like, he might be right about this, that by resisting the beast, you're feeding the beast?
Yeah, maybe, but I have all of these other examples of where we resisted it and we stood it down.
Yeah.
Like there's a restaurant this is a really good activism example, and it's a win so far. There's a restaurant called Basilico's that I did some pro bono legal work for, and they stayed open the entire lockdown. They were like, we're not closing, we're not doing mask mandates. In fact, we're going to do the opposite. No masks allowed, and we're going to stay open even later.
Right.
They were packed, and the Orange County government decided to not go after them. So Gavin Newsom sent alcoholic beverage control after them to strip them of their liquor license. So I defended them in court. I did a bunch of legal work for them. They ended up receiving, what did they receive? Last I heard, the court was like, well, we're going to mail you your sentence. We're going to mail it to you. We're going to mail it to you. We're coming for your license. It's coming. Never happened. There was so much publicity over the whole thing. We opposed them openly. You know, like we went to court and my client was like, I'm not wearing a mask in court over my dead body. You know, it was a big scene, a lot of local press coverage, and they won. Like the restaurant owner won.
Yeah.
And it made it easier for other people in the community to say, you know what, I'm doing that too. Enough is enough. So, you know, I do have some good stories of when you stand up against authority and you say like, this is unjust, like sometimes you win, like the underdog wins.
Yeah. I just kind of wonder, I think about like when I was in jiu-jitsu, and one of the things you learn is if you get put in a choke, you turn into the choke.
Yeah.
So you turn into the pain. And so it makes me wonder, is there where are you turning into the choke in this situation? And how do you turn into the choke? And maybe it's your strategy of staying in the belly of the beast and fighting them. And maybe it's Matt Erickson's strategy of moving into the Republican Party. Like, I don't know what turning into the choke looks like in this situation.
I encourage people to fight it on any and every ground you can think of.
Right.
If people like Tho Bishop want to clean up the GOP, go and do it. And I wish you the best of luck. And I say it sincerely.
Right.
Because I would be insane to say, I want you to fail so that we have a crappier world to live in. Like, no, Go do that. I'll clean up the LP, you clean up the GOP. Other people who are going to just be strictly agorist, like make progress on that. People with Bitcoin, like Bitcoin maximalists, okay, sometimes I think you're annoying on Twitter, but I want you to succeed. Just do it, like whatever it takes. Like if you think you can do some sort of Machiavellian power grab and, you know, take the reins away from Democrats, okay, just to hit them with everything you've got. And some people, I feel like, especially
I think we should point out that agorists can be annoying on Twitter too.
They can be really annoying. I think that it's interesting when certain people scream about how evil politics are and how you stay away from it, but they always have an opinion on politics. I'm like, which is it? Are you engaged in politics or do you hate it and you shun it? So that's my food for thought for agorists, just to, you know, mull that over.
I am an agorist that says, I don't care what you do one day out of every 2 years. You can go vote if you want. I don't care. But it's what you do with the rest of your time that actually makes a difference. And you're one of those people I know that are out there doing something with the rest of your time. You know, you're an activist on top of it. And whereas I may not necessarily agree with activism, I kind of look at it as a person that's begging for the government to, you know, give them something. At the same time, it's like, well, you've made progress. So at least you've done something. A lot of people have never done anything.
I encourage people to be, you know, activists, but I more so than that, I encourage people to engage in meaningful activism. So whatever you're doing, make it a really good use of your time. Make it results oriented. Right. So like, I don't know that protesting every weekend at the corner of whatever street, you know, with a sign is a great way to spend your time.
Right.
But if you're going to hold a giant protest and foster a sense of community, like the big anti-lockdown protest I had last year, I passed out like 50 copies of Economics in One Lesson to Republicans and met a whole bunch of other people who were willing to engage in black market activity to keep some of my friends in business who were like hairdressers and, you know, like industries that have been shut down. So it's like, use that to achieve, you know, something greater.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's my advice on activism.
You're like, you think about activism on a different level, though. You're thinking about it in ways that are actually making inroads, whereas a lot of people are doing things for the sake of doing things.
Yes.
And so that can be a big disappointment and a big,
Yeah.
Now, before I let you go, do you think that these people, and you know who I mean by these people, are going to start knocking on doors and trying to give injections at people's houses? Because there's a lot of pushback saying that's not what they actually meant. That's not what they're trying to say. So, do you actually think that is in their plans? Or do you think that's something they said in a particular way to get people to expose themselves as these, what they can label as domestic terrorists?
Yeah, I don't think that it's currently the plan to. I think the government is very opportunistic, though, and if they decide that that is a good idea, then later they'll do it. But they're going to have to take our temperature, right? And that might be what this is. How does the door-to-door program go?
Right. No.
Can we put everybody on a list? Like, what I don't recommend you do is open your door, show them your family, and tell them you're all unvaccinated.
All right, we're starting to lose connection now. So.
Oh no.
Yeah, you were breaking up there. I was like, oh, everything was going great. So, I guess we're gonna call it quits. The weather here has been so crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a thunderstorm before this is all said and done. But I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to stop recording, so plug what you got to plug before I hit stop.
Well, if you're interested in following along on libertarian politics, you can always check out my website, AngelaMcArdle.com. You can support me on Patreon if you'd like to see me clean up the LP and talk more about responsibility and finding truth and meaning in what you do. And I'd just like to say that on the level of activism, we have a 9/11 anti-war rally at the Capitol in Sacramento on September 11th. And the good activism we'll be doing there is trying to tell people to not sign up for military service.
Oh no, did you partner with the Boogaloo Boys to have a rally?
Not yet, but they're invited. They're invited.
Well, I know Magnus was planning an anti-war rally on 9/11 at the Capitol.
Probably a different state. This will be at the state.
He was planning at DC.
Oh, yeah. I'll be in Sacramento.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there is a big one in DC. A lot of people will be there too.
Yeah. I know he had talked to Scott about it already, so I was like,
I think Scott will be there. I don't want to jump the gun, but I think he will be there.
Hopefully. We need Scott at any anti-war rally there is.
Yes.
I'm so excited for the debate. I'm going to see Scott two days after the debate.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'll see Scott bitching about what he forgot to say before I get to see the debate.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, but he always does that. I'll text him. I'll be like, so like, how did this go? And he'll be like, I should have said this and I should have said that. And I'll be like, dude, I'm sure everybody loved it. Like, calm down, dude.
Right.
All right. I'm going to stop recording.
Said you're just a slave. All your good intentions took you to your grave. Your pride is how they killed you. With the flag you wave just like a fool. They promised you a mountain, gifted you a stone, they demanded that you throw it into your neighbor's home, and then seize all that they worked for and give it to the throne just like a tool. Well, as we all just stand in line and glorify new ways of being cruel, it seems to me humanity is not something that they're teaching us in school. They dumb us down all around, propaganda, their pollution. They set a cage up on the stage, a facade for all solution. They build a wall, block them all from this mental institution. It's insane. Now they're writing their own rule books and they're crossing all their T's. They're fashioning their people to all wear beggars' knees. If you want a clean drink of water, well, you must say pretty please. It's all a game. As we all just stand in line and justify these crimes done in our names, it seems to me authority and tyranny are both one and the same. Well, it's time to change the channel. It's time to set things right. Make them all rot with fear in their beds at night. Devour all their worthless souls and sacrificial right, just like we should. Cause this world it needs a cleansing to burn away the shame and destroy all the remnants of those who are to blame. And we'll stack them up like cordwood, watch them sizzle on the flames for good. Well, as we all just stand in line waiting for some kind of Robin Hood, our liberty will never be until our right to freedom is understood. Thank you.